planning to talk about card models and in three parts. First of all, my history as a card modeler, how I got into this and so forth. Secondly, the subjects that are available, subjects you can buy as card models, and the advantages of card modeling, the pluses. So we start off with how I started. And this goes back to 1969. Around that time, I visited Germany several times when I was in my early 20s to see my German pen friend, York, with whom I'd been corresponding for about 10 years. And on one visit, I was in Koblenz when I spotted something interesting in a shop window. My friend explained that these were cut-out paper models published in Wilhelmshaven, very popular in Germany at the time. I'd seen similar kits on the back of cereal packets at home, but they were pretty crude and there was nothing as complicated as this. Nevertheless, I was intrigued, and before my stay was over, I bought two Wilhelmshaven kits, one in Koblenz and another in Munich. And bearing in mind that at the time we were subject to exchange control regulations, we could only take £50 a year to spend abroad in one way or another. That was a bit daring of me, I suppose, and I brought them back to England. The first one that I started to build was a Bundesmarine Fletcher-class destroyer, and you can see here the kit of that. I was living at the time in a TOC H hostel in London, where there were several model makers, including some professionals, and they were intrigued by this. We had a sort of little undercroft where everyone was doing their models, and I worked down there. I started with a razor blade, a tube of Yoo-hoo, and the one thing that Ian perhaps didn't mention, a German dictionary. The instructions were all in German, and it was technical German at that. My main concern was whether the parts would fit together properly, which in the case of the serial cutouts I was used to, they often did not. But my fears were groundless. The fit was perfect. However, I never finished the destroyer. I moved to a flat and subsequently met and married Diana. But once settled in the new family home, I started my next kit, Kriegsmarine cruisers, Köln, Königsberg, and Karlsruhe. The hull was the same for all three, but several differences in superstructure and turrets were catered for, allowing the removal and insertion of correct pieces to model these ships. And you can see the forecastle that on one of the white sections, there are two dots which indicate the holes you can make in order to then place the different superstructures onto the forecastle and make the three different ships. Now, as luck would have it, a shop opened in South Kensington called Seagull Models, which might have been named after the Wilhelmshaven logo, which you can see in the bottom left-hand corner there. And they sold card models, including the Wilhelmshaven range. I was a frequent customer and built a whole fleet of warships, mostly German. Unusually, practically all the Wilhelmshaven ship range were waterline models. For someone used to airfix kits, this took a bit of getting used to, but I adapted. Now, having worked for Barclays Bank for just over 20 years, I woke up one Saturday morning in 1989 and thought about making a business out of importing and selling card model kits. Enter Markle Models, a hobby turned into a business. So Diana and I started Markle Models on the 1st of May 1990, to which other geopolitical events aligned to my advantage. The Berlin Wall had fallen the previous year, and communism was in retreat in Europe, events which were of great significance in the card modelling world. I visited the Nuremberg Toy Fair in 1990 and met representatives of my first two, and I thought only, suppliers, J.F. Schreiber and the Wilhelmshaven publisher, both Germans. Meanwhile, unbeknown to me, there was a very active card modelling hobby in Poland. Now, an early problem, which I've alluded to before, was the availability of instructions in English. Schreiber was fully committed to providing such, but some of the others weren't. The Polish kits in particular, with some later notable exceptions, had only Polish texts. However, someone once said to me, although English instructions were very useful, you don't get instructions with jigsaws. But following a meeting with an American couple called Newman, by the name of Newman, who operated under the name of, I think, Paper Soldier, I decided to give the Polish kits a go and provide some generalized English instructions together with an invitation to contact me for advice if the people got stuck. Now, in Poland in the late 1950s, under the auspices of the Ministry of Defense, kits were published under the brand Mały Modelarz, which means little modeler in Polish, on a monthly basis. The kits were very popular, with the entire print run, which I think was something like 40,000, selling out in a day. The paper was not much different from wood pulp, but the hand-drawn designs produced good models. This is a model of HMS Vanguard, which is actually just at the time the communist regime was coming to an end. But you can see on the back, on the left-hand side, the detail on the diagrams there, all the different bits and pieces there. This shows some of the parts of the Vanguard and the way in which it's put together. I was quite surprised, actually, just an aside, doing another model in this range where there was an open bridge. I think it was HMS Dido, it was an open bridge, and I'd expected that it would just be a flat deck, but in fact I got a little bit of grating to cut out and put onto the deck, something like you can see the little white sections on parts 33 and 34, 34 rather. So with the collapse of communism, the Polish market opened up. And while Mały Modelarz continued and benefited from access to better paper, there was a proliferation of mainly family-owned publishing enterprises producing all sorts of models initially for the Polish market. So let's have a look at some of the Polish offerings. Now, first is from JSC, which is a company based, or a publisher based in Gdańsk, and specializing in waterline ships, scale 1 to 400 and 1 to 250. All come with full English instructions, and they're mostly of metal ships, that is to say modern post-1850, I suppose. A very good range, for example, not only the obligatory Titanic, and you can also make her sister the Olympic from that kit instead, if you wish, but also the Carpathia and the Californian, which both feature in the tragedy of her sinking. And here's a piece of the Californian kit showing the diagrams that accompany the kit and the actual pieces of the kit itself. And here is a picture of the three ships complete. JSC also produced some very unusual maritime subjects. Here are three examples. The Elbe Highway, which unfortunately is no longer available at present, is a car transporter. And Großdeutschland, it was designed as the replacement, the next ship in the range, to the Bismarck and Tirpitz. Looks very similar in many ways to that ship. About 30 years ago, I got a book out of the library about the Wilhelm Gustloff. And for those unfamiliar with her, she was a German liner torpedoed and sunk in January 1945 outside Gdynia. And she was carrying people fleeing from the advancing Red Army, and it's estimated that well over 9,000 people lost their lives. This is the largest loss of life of a single ship sinking. And obviously she was in wartime. The Titanic is noted because that was a peacetime sinking. But shortly after reading the book, I was asked by a customer about a kit of the ship, and none existed, and I forgot all about it. But a few years later, JSC published a kit of the ship, together, as you can see, with the attacking submarine in the foreground, a torpedo boat, which was the escort of the liner, and a tugboat. JSC have also a small range of 1 to 250 scale kits, including some very interesting World War I ships. Here we see three Royal Navy ships, the HMS Lion and Invincible, the battle cruisers at Jutland. Invincible was one that sadly blew up, and HMS Dreadnought, the first in the line. Dreadnoughts. Here we have the model of HMS Lion, made by not made by me, made by the publisher. And here's a model of the Dreadnought as well. You can see it's very detailed. The turrets will turn and the guns elevate and depress. Now, GPM is another company. They are a general model making company, have aircraft and ships and quite a lot of others as well. In fact, I was asked the other day if they do a model of the Pope, and I said, yes, they do, actually. The Pope being Polish, obviously. They're based near Łódź with a wide range of models. The ships are mostly full hull, 1 to 200 scale. So the larger ships like Prince of Wales, Bismarck, USS Hornet, are going to be about 4 to 5 feet long when completed. The 1 to 200 scale for ships is quite widely used in Poland. Now, we mentioned the Titanic and the Californian and Carpathian. And someone asked me, what about the iceberg? Well, there we are. The GPM have got a model of the Titanic with the iceberg in the background. That particular Titanic is not available at the moment. It was a very popular model. And it's quite tricky to make that hull because it's not the conventional hull that you expect. You've got this sort of wedge-shaped thing you've got to stick on onto the sea. The glowworm is also a very popular model, 200 scale. She was the destroyer which attacked the Hipper in the Norway campaign, rammed the Hipper and sunk. All right, here are a couple of other models. Again, HMS Lion, this time a full hull model and somewhat larger than the JSC one. And the Gneisenau is a fairly new kit from Spey's squadron. Most Polish kits have internal parts printed on paper and they are then laminated onto thicker card before cutting out. But as an alternative, many kits, there are now available separate sets of these internal parts cut out by laser very accurately onto thick card. And this is a kit of the HMS Prince of Wales. So on the right-hand side, you've got the kit of the Prince of Wales, which is complete in itself. Buy the kit and you can make it. There are parts there, internal parts to make the strengthening of the hull on paper, and you just need to have to stick them on card. However, there is a set of parts on the left available separately, which, as you can see, contains all these pieces of card, which are cut out very, very accurately and are held in place. If you look very closely, you can see that the black lines around the parts usually have a little white piece somewhere along there where the card has not been cut, and so that just holds the part into the fret until you want to cut it out. Another publisher in Poland is a company called Phantom, which appears to be a very small outfit, even by Polish standards. They produce about one ship kit every 2 years. Their latest model is a World War I armoured cruiser, seen here, HMS Black Prince, which we've only just got in. They've also done the battleship HMS Malaya and the cruiser HMS Suffolk, which is here seen, the one that shadowed the Bismarck. And an earlier model is the cruiser HMS Good Hope, which was sunk by the aforementioned Gneisenau. And these are all 1 to 200 scale again. A further publisher goes under the name of Shipyard or Rare Birds. I'm not sure what the Rare Birds is all about, but they have the parrot in the logo. It's another family-run outfit, a father, mother, and 2 sons. They specialize in wooden period ships, and the range includes Captain Cooke's HMB Endeavour. This is a picture of one of the construction diagrams from the kit, and you can see the level of detail you've got there. And the Revenge, and this is a picture a customer sent me of his hull in the making, and you can see there all the different parts of the internal structure on which obviously the outer part will be eventually hung. Another subject is the Lexington, an American brig, and then the Santa Maria. And here's something you do tend to find often with card models. You sometimes have more than one ship in the pack. So as with the Wilhelm Gustloff, there were the 3 other little ships. So you've got the Santa Maria, which is a very popular ship around the world. I mean, not just modeling, but a lot of countries have them on their stamps and so forth. But you've got the Nina as well, one of the other ships in Columbus's first fleet. And the diagram there again from Shipyard shows the way in which it's put together. The Shipyard as well do provide proper English instructions, and you can see actually there on the left-hand side, just below that little representation of the Americas, that you've got a little English legend in orange there. Now I'm just going to go off message a little bit with Shipyard because they also produce some ship's plans. So they've got 2 or 3 of these, and I thought it's worth mentioning to you. This is one of the Santa Leocardia, Spanish frigate, late 18th century. And here we see one of the plates from these plans, color plate, and then these show the lines, various lines, and more. This is plate 17. So there are quite a lot of sheets in this, I think about 20, 25 sheets, A3 or usually A2 sheets in these plans. And this is another of their plans, HMS Wolf, again with color plates. And here's some lines. The plans are printed on A3 and A2 sheets, and they include all lines, constructional details, deck fittings, and rigging. When I got them, first of all, I wasn't sure what to do with them. I was sent a sample, and eventually I contacted Model Boats magazine, and they put me in touch with Keith Julia. I think he's no longer alive, but he had a look at the plans, and he came back and said they're very good. They are actually plans of the ship. They're not adapted for model making. That is up to you, but they are the proper ship in the first instance. That was just a brief excursion into ship's plans. Going on to other publishers from Poland, we've now got WAK, again, another general model maker, but they've got here a picture of HMS Badger, which was Nelson's first command. And here's some pieces of the kit showing the actual layout of the parts and the sort of things that you've got to cut out and build, and then the diagrams as well. This is more modern. The Modelique is again another general model maker. This is a model of the USS Ohio. Some of the American submarines are about as large as the dreadnoughts were. I think huge things. A further company, this is a sort of trip through all the different companies of Poland. Next is WIR, but they go under the title of Partenova Flotta, which is cardboard fleet, based near the Russian, Lithuanian, Belarusian borders. So good luck there. Specializing in 1 to 50 scale aircraft and 1 to 300 scale ships, so different scale. This one here shows Peruvian ironclad Huascar. I think it was one of the first ever ironclad, quite an interesting ship. Right, and here's one of an Arab dhow, which again is a rather unusual subject. I have to say, I think both of those are now unavailable, so I'm sorry about that, but there are some other interesting kits they have. You will see, actually, they are all in Polish, but at the same time, you know, it's back to my comment about the jigsaw, really, I think. Right, a further publisher that we've got is a company called ProArte, which produced some US Civil War subjects. Again, you've got in the middle the obligatory Monitor, and another on the left the USS Choctaw. I've heard of the Monitor. I haven't heard of the Choctaw, but presumably the Americans, the federal authorities, were producing a lot of these at the time. The interesting one on the right is actually the Louisiana State Navy ship or something, Governor Moore, which also was involved in the conflict. Presumably, Louisiana had its own navy at the time, and this particular ship, named after a local politician, was used at one point. But anyway, an interesting subject. And then we see some pieces from the kit of the Choctaw itself. So it's very unusual layout, the original ironclads from the American Civil War. We now go on to Maui Modelage, which was mentioned before, and now the brand continues. The communist wood pulp has been replaced by good quality paper, and the designs are on a par with other Polish publishers. Here we've got the Cooke's Endeavour and the USS Essex. The USS Essex, I think, is 300 scale, so it's a slightly smaller than the 200 scale one. And the Endeavour is a 1 to 100 scale, so approximately 1 to 96 scale, which is what the shipyard sailing ships are done in. And as you can see, they've got dates on them. They were actually still published in magazine form. Now, that takes into account the Polish publishers, or quite a few of them at any rate. Now, we've mentioned 2 German publishers. In 1995, a new German publisher, Scheuer and Struve, began publishing 1 to 250 scale waterline ship models. The kits are highly detailed, and in 1999, their kit of Bismarck, with over 7,000 parts, was named Model of the Year by the German model magazine Model Fan. Now, it may have been named as the Model of the Year. I'm afraid I'm not the Modeler of the Year. This is my version of it. As you can see, I've buggered up the bow. But anyway, having said all that, I've seen pictures of it and it's done properly, but that was just my mess up, I'm afraid. But that's the kit, and I've got another picture later on which you can see of another version of the same kit. Although the original company ceased trading in 2009, the range was taken up and expanded by a lady called Ulrika Fentons, who publishes under her name still. Right, now here's one of their models, completely different actually, the two Norfolk wherries, the Albion and the Gleaner. These little ships are about, I think they say 71 millimeters long, so 3 inches long. So there's something quite different there, and they've even got little men as well that you can see to cut out and put on the decks if you want to. But lovely, lovely little kits and real little gems, I think, those two. This is a computer generation now, so this is on the front of the model kit itself and you can build this, but what you're seeing in front is an idealized version of a harbour frontage in Germany in the 1930s. The centerpiece is one of their Hamburg standard models, the Schwan, and then that's complemented by the lighters and the tug on the sea. And then on the other side of the ship, there's the harbour buildings, installations, the cranes, there's a harbour railway, there's a limousine right down on the left, and just before that, there is I think it's a milk wagon or something with a couple of horses, one of which is drinking and one of which isn't. There's an awful lot of stuff in there, and that's one of their, it's an interesting, I think you can see, yes, you can see at the bottom, you can see some of the detail there as well. I mentioned J.F. Schreiber as one of the German publishers. They do ship kits, and here is one of the Great Eastern. So this is a full hull model, 1:200 scale, it's about 4 feet long. Whoever made this got the bow right. It wasn't me, anyway. The kit also includes, you see at the top middle there, a separate model of the engines. They're not meant to go into the ship itself. It's just a nice little model to make as well of the Victorian engines that Brunel would have installed in the ship. I realized some weeks ago that I was talking to you about modern metal ships and wooden sailing ships of the past 400 years. And I had omitted some very interesting subjects from the ancient world. And so I hurriedly put in this page from the Schreiber catalogue. And you see some of their offerings there. They've got at the top inside left is the Hansa Kogger, a medieval Hanseatic cog sailing ship. Below that, a riverboat, the Ulmer Schachtel, which again I think is sort of medieval. At the bottom left is the Roman cargo ship. And then on the other side, on the right top, the Roman quinquereme and a Greek bireme. And the one that reminded me to mention these in my talks, inside left bottom, is the so-called Jesus boat, which is a reconstruction of a 1st century AD Galilean fishing boat, such as is mentioned in the New Testament. So these are all models that are available. And a further thing, I was talking to someone today and he asked me about lighthouses. And I thought, oh, yes, you might be interested in lighthouses. There are also various lighthouse models that are available. They tend to be mostly Polish and German. I have got one of some Australian lighthouses. So the lighthouse is another thing, if that is something that's of interest. So now we go on to the advantages of card modeling. And the first thing is the tools, the basic tools required. Here you see a knife or scalpel, a ruler, preferably metal, a small screwdriver I find quite useful for scoring and rolling tubes, and a cutting mat. PVA wood glue, such as Evo Stick, is fine for sticking a card, which is only processed wood, of course, and it's relatively pleasant to use. And again, it's the thing you can come inside from the cold and do it in the lounge or whatever, because there are no fumes. Clear Yoo-hoo is also effective, but it's somewhat messy. That will get you started. However, if you want to, you might want to invest in some aerosol glue. Next slide, please, which I find very useful if you've got large sheets of paper to laminate onto card. It's quite useful to do this rather than to smear on the Evo stick on the back of a sheet of paper. And you also, I put in the paintbrushes there because some people like to touch up the cut edges of the card just to cover over the white of the card. When I do that, I tend to find acrylics are best rather than watercolors. That brings me on to point number two, which is that the card generally, the card models generally are printed in colour. I'm sure I'm not alone in having started kit building with Airfix kits in the 1950s. The 1 and 11 pence kits from Woolworths were a marvel of the age, and who could resist opening the packet and immediately gluing the parts together? Once the model was made and the transfers applied, the model had to be painted. And then came the problem. If only I'd waited and painted the pieces first. The Spitfire or HMS Victory must either stay all white or grey plastic, or, to borrow a Morecambe and Wise metaphor, to end up looking like it was painted with a shovel. The card kits are usually printed in full colour, so you can start making them immediately, and the printed detail will be excellent. Indeed, some kits, particularly the architectural models from Schreiber, appear to have photographic detail. The kits are home friendly, unlike wood or plastic models which require workshop facilities and or ventilation for fumes. Card models are ideal for making indoors. Cutting and folding card leaves little mess, which can be easily cleared up, and PVA glue does not produce fumes. A small table in the lounge can suffice as a workshop, and I find card modelling an excellent antidote to falling asleep in front of the telly. And of course, in the winter months, you can sit inside in the warmth, not in the cold shed. The use of card models allows models to be built in a similar fashion to the original, particularly with regard to ships. The steel or wooden hulls must be braced internally to provide the necessary strength, and the same techniques apply to models built from card. The apotheosis of this practice is the SD14 card model kit, which I mentioned at the beginning. The kit was conceived by Captain George Robinson from the Merchant Navy, who, when working as a safety officer on the Manchester Ship Canal, studied the internal architecture of the ships and realized that it should be possible to substitute card for steel plate and glue for weld. And in cooperation with Austin and Pickersgill, Sunderland Shipyard, George put his theory into practice with their SD14 general cargo ship design. The resulting kit allows the modeler to build a 1:70 scale, 7-foot long model of the SD14 down to the last cabin and ladder rung. George entered his model in the 1982 Shipwrights model competition at Guildhall, London, and won. And there's George and his wife, Barbara, and their model of the SD14, which was deliberately left open so that you could see inside in the internal detail. Here is another SD14 being made. It comes in 3 parts, forward, midships, and after, so the after section is missing. Further example is this one, which was this I photographed at the Deutsche Schifffahrtsmuseum in Bremerhaven. That shows, again, the interior of the holds, and you can see, if you look on the superstructure, the side has been left off there so that you can actually see into I think you can see the cabins are open, but all the cabins are there. And just in case you were wondering, it is possible to build a working model with suitable waterproofing, as George's own model here shows. This was sailing at the time on, I think it's Blackfields Park in Manchester. He used to get little boys to put bricks into the hold to give it ballast, and then he'd take the bricks around the island in the pond. Sadly, that model no longer exists. The boating house where it was housed was broken into, and some lunatics just smashed up a lot of ships. There we are. But that's another story. But anyway, it can be sailed. Now, another use of card models is as a resource. You don't have to make the kit up. Some people will use the drawings as a reference or a template for another model in a different scale and or material. Some years ago, one of the JSC 1:400 scale kits of HMS Dreadnought was used to make a model in plastic card, and this was then eligible to enter into the IPMS UK National Championships, and I believe the model won a prize. When I first started Marker Models, I was asked about books or guides on how to model in card. At the time, there wasn't much available. And then in 2003, Schreiber published this book, Card Modeling Basic and Advanced Techniques, written by the late Alvar Hansen, a noted Polish kit designer. The 88-page book, which is available from Marker Models, covers tools, materials, glues, paints, as well as various types of model available. An easy-to-make model included to start you off. And within the book itself, there's a close-up of the Hamburg Bismarck. Again, that is made by the, I think probably by the manufacturer, and it's certainly a better model than mine. The book, together with most of the kits above, apart from the Elbe Highway and I think the Dow and the Huascar, are available from me. I trade under the name of Markle Models, not to be confused with the publicity-shy Duchess of Sussex. I have over 1,400 kits in my range, of which about 30% are ship and boat models. I have a very low-tech website at www.markle.co.uk, and I have published paper catalogues over the years. And this shows you the front covers of many of the catalogues that I've produced. I have got quite a few customers abroad, especially in North America, and I accept Visa and MasterCard, and more importantly these days, PayPal. So rather than click buttons on my website, there aren't any anyway, if you send me an email saying what you want, I can send you a PayPal invoice. I also publish a newsletter, Cutting Remarks. This one has an article on the invasion of Sicily in 1943, Operation Husky, for which JSC produce a kit, which is seen here, comprises the Polish liner Batory converted to a troop ship, together with some landing craft, and there's some tanks in there you can just see on a sea base. Hard copies of current and back issues are available on subscription and straight purchase of back issues. The current issue can also be sent free of charge, and in fact I'm quite happy to send you a back issue by email if you'd like to have that free of charge. I do operate a 14-day no-quibble money-back guarantee, which I've done for 30-odd, well, since starting. So if you like to start card modeling, but you're not sure what you're getting, you can, if you don't like what you find you get, then you can send it back and I will send you a full refund. There's a lot more I could say about card modeling and ships, but I'll stop now. And if you have any questions or comments, I shall try to answer them. Thank you very much.